Going on, everybody? It's Brandon from BEZ Tech here, where the topic of today's video is core count. Does it matter? Well, we surveyed 100 guest members in the audience, and this is what they had to say. Well, it's, no, maybe? Are you dumb? Of course it matters. I mean, I upgraded from a 6 core to a 16 core, and now I get like 5 more FPS in Minecraft, bro. The two CPUs we're going to be using today are the Ryzen 7 7700X and the Ryzen 5 7600X. And the reason I chose these two CPUs specifically is they have very similar clock speeds. And the Ryzen 5 being a 6 core, obviously, and the Ryzen 7 being an 8 core. Like I said, these two CPUs have very similar clock speeds within 0.1 gigahertz of each other, and actually it's the 6 core that has a slightly higher speed. So I figured these two would be a really good pair to show that it's still pretty much about single core performance and clock speeds than it is core count. Now, there are some games out there that will utilize a higher core count because truthfully, 100% what it depends on at the end of the day is how the game is optimized itself. How is the game optimized to run on your PC? So because of that, you can actually find cases where somebody with technically lower specs is experiencing better performance. And to take it one step further, I'm going to be using my personal rig for this, and the only thing I'm going to swap out in between the tests is the CPU itself. The GPU I'm going to use is my 4070 Super, which I have in my personal rig upstairs. Not this. This is my little beater. And the reason I'm going with my 4070 Super is that is a true mid-range card. The fact is most people cannot afford a 4090. I can't afford a 4090. And if you do have a 4090, you'll see that because it's all about clock speed and how the game is optimized, it doesn't really matter what CPU you have. If you have a 4090, you're gonna get some CPU bottlenecking. There's nothing you can do about it. So we'll start off with the 7700X 8-core CPU and some Doom Eternal, and I'm going to be playing everything on my 34-inch ultra-wide Asus TUF 1440p 165Hz refresh rate monitor. Now, Doom Eternal is a bit of an older game at this point, but it's very well optimized. Now, you'll notice throughout this entire testing process that no matter what resolution or which CPU we're using, we're always going to hover right around 163, 166 FPS. And the reason for this is because, like I said, it's more about clock speed and single core performance than it is about core count. Remember, these two CPUs are almost identical in core performance. However, Doom Eternal is not FPS capped at all. The rest of my specs for my personal rig are motherboard being a Strix B650EF gaming Wi-Fi, and my RAM is 32GB of Corsair Vengeance running at 6000 MHz with DOCP enabled. My PSU is the Corsair RM750E. My fans are all the Lee & Lee Infinity SL fans. My cooler is the Strix Ryuo 360mm AIO. And yes, I did say Ryuo, not Ryujin. My hard drive is a 1TB Samsung 990 Pro. The GPU is the Founders Edition 4070 Super. And obviously the CPU is going to vary between the 7700X and the 7600X. Now, if you watched any of the Doom Eternal gameplay in either the Spooky Molten video or the Purple Patriot video, you'll probably notice a distinct talent difference between this gameplay and those. That's because this is me playing, and the other videos, those were Zach. Now, Zach and I are both pretty hardcore gamers, but he definitely has me beat when it comes to first-person shooters. He's been playing Doom his entire life. And yes, he has completed this game in Ultra Nightmare pretty quickly, whereas How is this dude eating so many rockets? Now we'll put the 7600 6-core CPU in here, and as you can see, like I said earlier, there's really no difference in performance whatsoever. So regardless of how many cores we have in Doom Eternal, we're going to be bottlenecking our 4070 Super ever so slightly. But for now, let's go ahead and fire up Cyberpunk and see what the difference is like on a much more demanding CPU-intensive game in the year 2077. So starting off in Cyberpunk with the 7700X 8-core CPU, We're gonna get about an average of 99 FPS, but it's gonna jump around a little bit because we do have DLSS on and set to quality. Our GPU utilization is gonna hover between 97 to 99%, and I see this question asked a lot whether that's actually a bad thing for your GPU. No, that's a good thing. That means you've picked a CPU and paired it well with the GPU that's not too overpowered, because you want it running at those percentages. You want to get the most out of your GPU. So yes, it's a good thing. But you'll see later once we put in the 7600X that the FPS actually is going to go down a bit, but the GPU utilization and the CPU utilization are going to stay largely the same. While it mostly does still come down to single core performance and core speed, because those will have a larger effect, Cyberpunk is one of few games that is actually optimized to take advantage of more cores. So you will see that having these 2 extra cores, we are going to benefit by about 10%. And this is the reason why people are starting to say you should probably go 8 cores for gaming, because the future, hopefully, is going to do this more. But as of now, on average, it's not. That's why I say 6 cores is still plenty enough for gaming, and it's also why the 14900K is still technically the fastest gaming CPU on the market. Until July 31st when the 9000 series comes out. Go Team Red! And I am accepting sponsorships, AMD. But if you're on a budget and you're just looking to maximize performance, the smartest thing to do would be to spend the most possible on your GPU, and then pick a smaller core count with a faster clock speed to maximize that GPU performance. Now if we drop it down to 1080p, you can see obviously we're getting a lot more frames per second, but our GPU utilization stays consistent. This is what I mean by a good pairing and a good combination. Even in 1080p, the 4070 Super and the 7700X 8-core CPU are both true mid-range level performance. Now if you don't know a lot about speeds and gigahertz and whatnot, you can always look to places like Reddit or any other place where the community is very active, because overall I will say the PC community does a very good job at explaining things to new people and balancing their systems. But of course, you could always go to beeasybuilds.com and message us. But for now, let's go ahead and check it out and see how the 7600X 6-core CPU fares in Cyberpunk. And remember what I said earlier, so now we have the 6-core 7600X in, and although we are getting less frames per second, it's still great performance. Our GPU utilization is just about the same, and that's again because these 2 CPUs have pretty much the same clock speeds. But the reason that we're getting about 10% less frames than the 8-core CPU is again because Cyberpunk is one of those very few games that will take advantage of having 8 cores. Or 16 cores. And for that very same fact, our CPU utilization has gone up just a little bit because we lost 2 cores. And 2 cores is not as much as 6 or 8, so it's not going to be a significant bump. So dropping it down to 1080p, we see exactly what we would expect to see. More frames and more CPU utilization. Why? Because at a lower resolution, our GPU is able to push more frames, thus making the CPU work harder. And there's nothing I've said in this video that is going to be true for every game out there, because just like I said at the beginning, what it truly falls down to is how the game is optimized to run on your components. So, the point I'm trying to make with this video is, does core count matter? Sometimes, yes. But, in the long run, the safer thing to do is just make sure you balance your components properly. And in terms of how long your components are going to be viable, well, that unfortunately still kind of depends on how much you're willing to spend. So now you're probably wondering, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you? It means what I've been saying. It depends on the games that you're going to be playing. And if all you're going to be playing is major recent AAA games like Cyberpunk, then it's probably a better idea, if you can afford it, to go ahead and pick up an 8-core or more. But if you're on a budget, there is nothing wrong with a 6-core, because the fact is most games these days still are optimized for single-core performance. So if you can get a 6-core that has similar clock speeds to an 8-core, you're really not going to notice any difference in most games, just like you saw in Doom Eternal. Now I was also planning on taking my 4070 Super and putting it into this here, which has a 5600G, so that you can see with a much lower clock speed, that's where you're gonna get a big difference in performance. But unfortunately, with everything I got going on, you know, making these videos, trying to get our custom PC business going, still working a regular 8 to 5 job, I just really didn't want to delay this video any further. But if that's something you guys would like to see, let me know down in the comments, and maybe let me know some other games you might want to see tested with these CPUs. But of course, you could always go to our website at beeasybuilds.com and message us with any question you have, check out our pre-builds, or customize your own. And don't forget to watch our giveaway video so you can find out how to get 2 chances to win that PC, and we're just about halfway to our 2,000 subscriber goal. We'll see you guys next time.